Thursday, November 1st. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk about books you should read.
Let's do this.
So, I was in a car accident today.
Were you really? But wait, you weren't.
Well, yes. See, I saved this because I want to get your reaction.
Did you drive somewhere today?
Yes.
Where did you drive?
I drove to Cold Spring.
For what?
To go climbing.
Oh, okay.
And then since I was there, I drove further south because from Breakneck Ridge, we'd always see this pile of what looked like a burned down building, like on this point. And I always wondered what it was. So finally, I drove over there and found it. And it was just a little tiny hill that the rocks just look like a burned down building from a distance.
Well, but wait. Your car is in the driveway and it looks undamaged. I didn't expect it, but...
So, I'm in the parking lot outside of the nice, market down in Cold Spring, and I'm sitting there parked. I pull out of a parking spot, and I shift, from reverse into drive. I'm about to go. And then, bump, this SUV is backed into me. Pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I just stop, and I just sit there, I got the phone out. I'm about to call the police. I'm all set to, take a picture, call my insurance, get ready to sue this person for damages. I don't have to pay my deductible.
Getting ready to deal with indignancy possibilities.
I'm fully prepared because I'm ready to deal with people like that. I was already about to dial the police because I wasn't gonna let this person get away. Mm-hmm. They were gonna pay for all the damages. So I get out and I'm holding my cell phone and I look. And the car's sitting there, and the woman gets out. And she's nice and young, and she has a kid in the car. And first of all, she comes out crazily apologetic, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. That was totally my fault.
Mm-hmm.
So that diffused me a little bit. I turned off my whoop some ass mode.
All right, let's see. I would be rolling my eyes at this point.
Well, I was like, so then I look at where she has struck me, and there's a big dent. And she says, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, I'm looking, and I start laughing hysterically.
That dent was there before.
Well, I had a dent because I worked in the Bronx, and there's a dent where someone just bumped into my car while it was parked, and I wasn't going to pay my deductible to get that fixed, so I just didn't care.
Deductibles.
And there was no one to sue.
Insurance companies raking it in on that.
Well, I could have zero deductible, but there was no one to sue because I had no... I didn't know who did it. For all I know, it was some illegal guy just bumped into it with his unregistered car.
Who knows?
For all I know,
some guy came down the street with a hammer, went wham, and went back.
It was a recon with an aluminum bat.
Who knows?
Or a scout, as it were.
Yep.
So, her car, the back bumper, is sitting inside of that pre-existing dent. Perfectly. It could not have been more perfect.
Are you sure it was pre-existing?
Yes.
All right.
Scott, you've seen that dent. It's been there for a year.
I don't really inspect your car so much.
It's right there. There's a big dent in the driver's side.
I've seen that dent.
That's the dent.
Oh, you said you were backing out and you got bumped, so I thought it was the back.
I was all the way backed out, and then she backed into my side.
Oh, okay.
So... it's sitting in the dent, and I look, and the dent is not deeper or anything. It's the exact same dent. Now, for a second, I think, all I'd have to do is call the police anyway, and this woman would pay for all the repairs.
Yeah, free dent, but you don't care about your car.
Yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind my car to look nicer, and also...
it'd be effort, though, if not money.
No, you know how little effort it would be? It was clearly her fault, and in front of a witness, she had said it was her fault. So I was, there would be no trial. It would have been summary judgment, and I would have gotten my deductible, without any effort at all.
All right.
But... because, one, she was apologetic and realized that she had made the mistake. Two, just the absurdity of the fact that she had hit me in the dent.
Well, I think as soon as you start even if it was me, right, I would have probably gone the route of trying to get the deductible if it was a car I cared about and I cared about doing the effort, which I wouldn't with your car.
If it was a car I cared about, I would have fixed the dent in the first place. So she would have made a new dent.
That's true. But the fact that I would have seen her making a dent where there's already a dent, my laughing uncontrollably would have prevented me from being able to do anything.
I was laughing so hard. She's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, all right. And I tell her the whole deal. And she's like, really? She didn't believe me. I'm trying to scam her. I'm like, seriously, I'm not going to call the police. There's no damage to your car that I can tell, and I really don't care. And I shook her hand, and I drove away laughing.
All right.
So this woman who ran into my car with her giant SUV was saved from the wrath of Rim when he's in the right and has a police ready to back him up. by the sheer absurdity of the random chance.
Well, I guess that story didn't go anywhere we thought it was going to go, so I'll just add who was in the car besides her?
I don't know, some kid.
Didn't need that SUV. Get a real car.
Yeah.
A small car. That's all I'll say.
Now, I have a better bit, but a different leader bit, but it was about a dream I had, but I guess I could leave it at that. But
let that go.
I just want to say it involved Saved by the Bell.
What the fuck?
Seriously.
The college years?
No. Though,
Mr.
I woke up and I laid in bed and I was thinking to myself, wow. And then I remembered the college years because I'd forgotten about that. And I laid in bed.
I only watched one episode of that. Gladly.
I laid in bed for like 20 minutes.
Or ungladly.
And I was thinking, so which was worse, the college years or the new class? And
it
then
was
I realized,
new class?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Screech was still there, and yeah.
What? Did he get held back? He
was like working at the school. I think he was the principal. I don't remember.
Well, we know what he's doing now.
But, but yeah, I was Zach Morris, and Guitar Heroes played heavily in.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
So what do you have that can top that?
Nothing really. I'm not topping something. I just need to say something.
What do you need to say?
So I have not been a fan of the Facebooks or the Twitters or the Pounces or any of those sorts of things.
I'd be a fan. You know what? I would use Facebook if I didn't have my own personal forum that all my friends used.
Also, if I was still in college,
God! If I was still in college, remember Orca?
When we were in college, Facebook was around, but it wasn't the business it is now. Now Facebook is amazing.
Like seriously, when we were in college, like Facebook was barely an embryo, and Orkut was the hot shit among like the techie crowd, and that got destroyed by the nation of Brazil. But before that, all of us were using Orkut like super hardcore, and then it got ruined and we gave up. But we saw that social networking was awesome if you're in college, and now not so awesome for us personally.
Right, but Facebook is the business. But I have a Facebook account, and I had a Pounce account, right? But I didn't really use these thingies. I only use, like, Dig and Delicious, and that's about it, But for some reason, I don't know why, I had a policy where I wouldn't make anyone my friend on Facebook or Pounce unless I knew who they were. And a lot of people would say, be my friend, and I'd say, no. Be my friend, no. And I realized I'm not even freaking using these things. What do I care if someone's my friend on these things or not? I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't really thinking at all about it so much, So I realized also maybe there's a chance. These things don't really, I don't have a use for them, right? But I'm poking at Facebook and there's stuff to poke and it passes the time at work when I'm bored, even though it doesn't do anything for me.
And to step up from draw a square on the desktop with the cursor, draw another square, draw a square around
waste ink doodling on a piece of paper.
Draw a square around like Misato's face on the desktop 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, so I decided now I'm going to change my policy. And if anyone wants to friend me on anything, I'll just say yes. And I think if I do that, it might make these things more useful. And also, there's one called Jaiku, which is sort of just like Twitter, only not Twitter. And basically, I wasn't interested in it, and now Google bought it, so I'm sort of interested to at least poke it for a few minutes. But when Google bought it, they made it invite only. So I want a Jaiku invite if anyone has one.
Man, remember when we didn't have Gmail?
Yeah, and if you've ever tried to friend me on Facebook or Pounce or anything, and I said no, try again. I will now say yes.
Not just no, but no.
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 Right. So, in the news, I have to say something about this, and I want to do a fun episode, so I'm not going to complain about people, but there's an article here on Slashdot, and the headline is Anti-Terrorism and the Death of the Chemistry Set. And no. I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say.
I've been railing about that for a while.
I'm not going to say at all what you think I'm going to say.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are trying to make the argument that chemistry sets are killed by all this anti-terrorism stuff.
Partially.
That is not true at all.
Partially true.
There is almost nothing you need for a fun chemistry set that you cannot just get if you want it. And there's no reason you couldn't include those in a chemistry set. The reason chemistry sets are not around so much anymore is that they are actually really dangerous if they're old school. And you can make very carcinogenic things very easily.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is that you can still make a chemistry set.
Yes, so seesaws are dangerous. We should have those for kids too.
I would argue that chemistry sets are far more dangerous. If old school kind of chemistry sets, because you can make
Well, it depends how old school. We go in the radioactive old school chemistry set?
No, not radioactive.
They made those.
The only reason they
Those
don't
are not cool.
The only reason they don't make chemistry sets like they used to is that companies aren't stupid. And an old school chemistry set, if parents don't keep an eye on kids or kids don't read the instructions, kids can make super dangerous and possibly deadly things.
That is, yeah.
And
you really have to keep an eye on your kids no matter what they're doing, no matter how dangerous it is.
But what I'm saying is that the liability there is massive, and I don't think any company should market a chemistry set because they're just opening themselves up to be destroyed.
Then again, I think that, they shouldn't really be liable if they put warnings on something and someone does it anyway.
But even then, there's not a big market for that either because parents would be afraid of a chemistry set. I mean, as a kid, I had a chemistry set. A kind of dangerous one.
I had an dangerous one.
Mine was, well, the thing is, I took when I was
at the local hobby shop, they sold any chemical for a chemistry set that you wanted on its own.
Well, when I was in high school, I took organic chemistry at the local community college, and I learned a lot. And then I went back to my old chemistry set, and I was sifting through it, and I realized just how carcinogenic half of the crap I had was, and I threw the stupid thing away.
Awesome.
I guess the problem is that chemistry sets, no matter what warnings you were to write on them, the fact is that chemistry as a whole, unless you're doing simple things, the amount of danger that can be created is far greater in many cases than the apparent danger. It's kind of like how I don't think we need a warning sign.
I think if you're messing with a chemistry set that there's a lot of danger going on.
No, I think the problem is that society in the U.S. is such that people assume that things are safe if they can be bought in a store. Kind of like how you go to like an amusement park, right? And you have you can drive the putt-putt car around the track, and you can steer left and right, but there's a rail, so if you try to steer off the road, it just kind of pulls the car back on the road. As a result, most kids I see on these things will turn the opposite direction of the road every time because they know they can't go off the road, and they just kind of go wee 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 wee.
Yeah, there is a case to be made that sort of we've trapped ourselves in this loop. We made things were dangerous, so we made them safer, and so people started to feel safe because things were safer, and then we sort of can't escape into a situation now where things are dangerous, but people realize they're dangerous because people have been trained for things to be safe, so we have to make everything safe, or else the people will hurt themselves because they've been made, grown up to assume everything is safe because we made it safe so that it wasn't crazy dangerous like in the olden days. And, I think we had to strike some sort of balance between some things we need to let them be dangerous in terms of for freedom and education and learning and growth of your mind, and some things we need to make safe so not everyone just dies horribly.
But regardless,
that are stupid and preventable.
My point is very simply, anyone who tries to blame terrorism or anti-terrorism laws on the death of the chemistry set, that is pretty much completely incorrect, and you're politicizing something that is not political, and that's such a stupid argument.
It is a tiny bit true.
No, it's
there
not.
There are a few specific things. Yes.
Like what?
But however,
like what? Name something.
I don't know, but I was reading about it, and there were things.
Where were you reading?
An article months ago that I could find if I wasn't in the middle of a podcast.
Yeah, so some guy on the internet.
No, a real, a scientist. Anyway, the thing I want to bring up about chemistry sets, right, is actually, I think a large demise of the chemistry set is greater attributed to the marketing of science to kids. If you look at it, go look at pictures of chemistry sets online, right? Look at a really old chemistry set from like the 60s or the 50s, and look at the picture on there. The picture is scientists doing serious business and, with like cool metal, lab coats and smartness going on, right?
Metal lab coats.
Yeah, metal lab coats. It's awesome, right? And it's got all sorts of, like a 1950s sort of
maybe that's because those chemistry sets were marketed in the 1950s.
Exactly. If you look at a chemistry set now, though, right? The scientists are like, wacky science, with like crazy Einstein hair and like goofy glasses and all these multicolors. And you market science now like it's some goofy kind of thing and not like a serious thing. And I think that the change in the way we've marketed science to kids is really what has caused the demise of the chemistry set. And, science is more of a goofy kind of thing, and it's not, it's not a serious thing.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I do agree that science is kind of seen differently nowadays, but then again, the old way didn't get people into science any better than the new way. It did
a long time ago.
I don't know.
All the scientists that are scientists right now.
Part of that's just because it takes a long time to be a respected scientist.
I know. But,
So, plus, I mean, how many of our friends are crazy
but
scientists?
there are decreasing numbers of people going into science majors at universities, at least in the U.S. Other countries are doing fine.
Honestly, I think one of the big reasons for that is that high school no longer prepares you for college.
That
and
too.
As a result, I mean, when I got to RIT and I had to take the crappiest calculus, it was like, can you do basic integrals and derivatives? And can you do basic discrete math? Like such rudimentary calculus. And people coming out of high school were failing this class miserably and having to retake it.
At my high school, by default, if you are the average kid taking the average classes, no honors, no nothing special, you don't learn any calculus at all. So, yeah.
But the thing is, it's not just that, because people came into RIT was just, they lacked the basic ability to do basic algebra.
Yep.
So the calculus thing is like, oh, you can't do calculus? So
It's a multifaceted problem.
So the professor was all like, all right, well, I'll break it down really simply. So he goes into like some, basic algebra things, like here's where calculus is derived from, and he found that people couldn't do the basic algebra.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Why are you here? How did you get in?
Because
That is a multifaceted problem going to high schools and college admissions and all sorts of things, but yeah, I do think that the change in the way science is marketed is sad.
All right, anyway, let's do a Thursday on that at some point, or a Monday.
I don't know. I think I said everything I had to say.
Now, more about going into college and why people are so unprepared.
Oh, okay, sure. So, I don't know most of my news things of the days are sort of both news and thing of the day, so I'm just going to pick this one to be the news.
Uh-huh.
So, at Disney World, they have that ride. It's a small world after all.
I rode it once, and I got stuck in it.
I wrote it. I didn't get stuck in it, and I had heard the song, and I thought it was like this historic, really important ride, and it really wasn't so exciting. I mean, it was cool, but
It's historic.
you don't need to ride it more than once. Is all I'll say. But anyway,
much cooler is the troll ride in Epcot. But anyway,
when they made this ride in 1963, they made that ride under the assumption that the average male rider would be 175 pounds. And the average woman rider would be at about 135 pounds.
I see what you did there. I see where you're going with this. I don't even know if we need to continue.
And that's why, Rim, it's funny that you say you got stuck, because these days it gets stuck quite often.
I just have to say, I also got stuck in the haunted house. And I remember when I was in line, I didn't even think of this until just now, but there was a woman and her kid, and the woman could not fit in the haunted house booth with her kid. And she was complaining about how the ride was bleh as a result, and she demanded to be let on, and they're like, we can't. You don't fit. But so we get stuck in the ride, right? There's things that pop out and say boo.
Yep.
Or scream or something.
That's the point of a haunted house.
So me and my grandma are stuck there for like 20 minutes. But the ride doesn't stop. Like, everything's still going on, except we're not moving. We stopped exactly in front of, like, this box, and every 5 seconds, a witch popped out and went, ah! It was, that was awesome. Like, if I could list some of the top 10 things that happened to me, good fucking God. So anyway.
So they made this ride, the It's a Small World After All ride, a long time ago in the 60s when people were less fat, averagely, in the U.S. at least. And, well, they're closing it down to redo it. They're going to make the flume bigger and wider and deeper with more water and bigger boats so that fatter people can ride it without making the ride stop and making everyone wait in line. And, the alternative is what they've been doing is, like, if a fat person wants to ride, they just put less people on the boat instead of filling it to capacity. But then it's longer lines because now they can do less people per boat.
Now that I recall, Cedar Point had to do that on the two flumes. Like, they had a guy who was always there, and his job was to look at the people and dole them out into boats.
Yep.
And you'd always see, like, a boat with a family of 4, boat with a family of 4, 4 boats with 4 fat people that are obviously a family of 4, and then another boat with a family of 4.
Yep.
Of course, what we always did is there's a waterfall, and there's a restaurant next to the waterfall. So we'd sit there and wave at the people when they're coming around so they wouldn't see the waterfall coming.
Yeah, I just wanna throw that in as our monthly complaint about fat people. And also
No. Not like fat people, not overweight people. I think that the issue here is obese people.
Yes.
There's
you gotta be obese to stop a ride.
There's a big
the
difference.
buoyancy of the boat and your weight is conquering that? Come on.
There's a big difference.
That is a problem.
We just got it. When we say fat people, what we really mean are people who are like obese to the point of where I would use the word morbid.
And people who did it to themselves.
Yeah.
Which is most of them.
If you got an extra 20 or 30 pounds, that's not what we're complaining about.
If you're not stopping the boat, I don't care.
I don't want to give the wrong impression.
No,
but
I do want to use it though as some evidence that like, look, these people are they're hurting themselves and they are hurting others, and here's an example of. I mean, it's not a big deal. Oh no, the line for the amusement park ride takes longer. Yeah, okay.
It is in Disney World. Good God.
It is, but it's not a big deal in terms of our society. But it is an example of, look, these people are hurting themselves and others.
I think it's
and
more
it's not good.
To the people who say that, people aren't getting fatter, we're just measuring differently or all that stuff. I mean, when you get to the point where the flume ride, the flume just stops halfway down because it bottomed out.
And in the 60s, it never bottomed out.
Yeah, I mean, the physical properties of water did not change in the last 40 years.
Oh, yes. The boat is less buoyant than it was 40 years ago.
Things of the day.
All right, you know those biodiesel type people, they think they're all green and cool, but they forget to calculate the fact of how much gas it takes to make the corn in the first place.
Well, it depends on, if you make biodiesel from cane sugar, it looks like it works great.
Yeah, there's all kinds of business with that. But you know what? We might not even need all that business, because there's a guy named Jonathan Goodwin.
Is this the kudzu guy?
What?
There was a guy who figured out a way to make biodiesel out of kudzu, which just kind of grows without doing anything to it.
Oh, I guess that's good too. But
it
no,
doesn't work fully yet.
This guy is even better. I mean, pretty much this is the only guy we need as far as I'm concerned. He's basically a genius when it comes to mechanics. Like is he Norman Borlaug? He might be. He didn't really go. I think he dropped out of school like in 7th grade. It says, and all he did was like buy old cars and repair them, and he's pretty much mechanic his whole life.
Wow, because you can't drop out of school in 7th grade now.
No, so he's 37 years old, right? And it says
when he dropped out, or now?
Now. It says he looks like Kevin Costner with better hair, but basically he is a professional car hacker. People, like famous people, send him their cars and he hacks them up.
I should send him my car.
No, let me give you an example, right? Neil Young just sent him a Lincoln Continental. You know what he's going to do to that Lincoln Continental?
Put some nice spinners on it and an airfoil.
No, he's not going to do that. He is going to take that Lincoln Continental and he is going to modify it with his special technologies. And when he is done with that Lincoln Continental, it will get how many miles per gallon?
1 billion.
100.
It's not too bad.
It will cut emissions by 80% and double the horsepower.
Now I have to say one thing. Is it possible that all he did was put a hidden tank full of rocket fuel and a special engine that slowly uses that rocket fuel, and then when it runs out?
It seems unlikely, because I imagine when he gives these cars back to these people after they pay him a lot of money and they try to fill it up with, grease from the local McDonald's, they're going to expect it to have twice the horsepower and 100 miles to the gallon.
Oh, it does, because the grease just gets trapped somewhere to replace the rocket fuel that's slowly being used. And when the rocket fuel runs out, he says, well, I guess your engine wore out. Here, let me fix it for you.
It's possible, but it's unlikely. In addition, he took an H3, right? One of the worst cars ever, right?
Second only to the H2.
I guess. He's doubled the horsepower from 300 to 600.
Why?
Because now it gets 60 miles to the gallon.
See, that's one thing that has always been known, but people don't seem to do, is that you can use a turbo to get more horsepower and make a car better.
Oh, he's using a turbine. He's got the electric motor and the turbine in tandem. He's got it all going on. It's
this is what I was saying is you could use a turbo theoretically.
This isn't a turbo. This is like a jet.
I know. All I was saying is theoretically you can use a turbo instead of increasing the power of a car, just making it more efficient.
Yeah,
but no one ever does that.
Well, you could just supercharge it the same way.
Well, yeah, because that's kind of beside the point.
Yes. Anyway,
because a super and a turbo are not that different.
Yeah, the point is that for a long time, I don't want to be all conspiracy nut here, right? But, people at like GM and Ford and places have all been saying, oh, it's not possible to do these things. We can't make them any more fuel efficient, whatever. If I was the government, I would go and I would check this guy out. Like if I was a congressman or a senator, I would go and check this guy out. Make sure it was legit. Bring some scientists with me, right? If it was legit, I would immediately make a law saying, well, all cars have to be 60 miles to the gallon now. That Hummer is 60 miles to the gallon. All cars can be that way. And you'd start seeing turbos in all your cars. Big ones.
I mean, there might be a lot of factors. Now, I don't want to
There are a lot of factors, but even so...
I'll play the devil's advocate.
You'd have a phase-in time.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that it's possible because there are a lot of technologies that... they give you gains up front, but in the long run, maybe the engines are a lot less durable.
There's all sorts of things to consider like that. But in general, for a long time, people like, car companies have been saying this sort of stuff is impossible, where just by changing the mechanics of a car and getting away from an old standard piston engine with the standard mechanics, you can get a lot of efficiency without changing a lot else.
Well, you know what? The car companies are actually 100% correct in the regard that it's impossible for them. Because...
It's impossible for them.
Well... When the majority of your expenses go to your old pensions and your workers because the unions are good and bad. I don't have an opinion on unions.
We'll do a union show.
I'll just say very simply, I think unions are a tool that can be used for good or for bad.
Yes.
And I have no opinion on unions in general. I have opinions on specific unions. Car industry union, problems in the U.S.
It had a purpose at a time of the Henry Ford times, and now we don't need it anymore.
Well, no, I think it could still have a purpose. I think it's more a matter of the unions kind of got scary and corrupt.
It's something like anything, no matter what it is, that's scary and corrupt is a problem. No matter what.
But still, if this works, I mean, maybe we should start using this.
I would very much like a car that gets better gas mileage and more horsepower. I would not have a problem with that. How about you?
So, what's cooler than an Armenian?
Armenian, you mean?
It is a person from Armenia or Armenia. The BBC pronounced it Armenia.
Okay.
That might be a British.
What's cooler than a person from Armenia? Two people from Armenia.
How about a rap from an Armenian?
Okay.
Just check this video out. There's a whole bunch of them with varying levels of humor, and I got a kick out of it. It's about red meat.
Okay, I watched one of these and I was not impressed.
Well, you're a horrible jaded. You didn't even like that awesome BioShock cosplay with the little girl.
The costume wasn't the greatest BioShock costume I've seen.
Where have you seen a better one?
On the internet.
Where?
Websites.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Are you sure it was a website? Are you sure it wasn't nothing?
I'm sure. And even so, the video was sort of like, all right, nothing exciting happening here. Move on.
Okay, well, you're just a jaded, horrible person.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I find this funny.
I think you're easily amused and simple-minded. Take that.
You know what? Easily amused means there's a lot more enjoyment to be had in the world.
Oh, a lot less brains.
Or a lot less horrible, tedious boredom.
I got my non-horrible, tedious boredom.
What are you talking about? You didn't do anything at work today but putz around and be bored. Yeah, you know what? I thought that for about a week, and there's a reason I quit my job.
Yeah, that's the reason I quit the last job, too. But no, I do work. I just finished my work yesterday because I'm so awesome. They didn't give me new work. Okay. So today on the show, what are we doing?
Well, actually, we had. See, the thing is, lately we've been doing a lot of shows where we talk about something that's bothersome to us or something where we have a strong opinion or a controversial subject and we got to do our research or something. And it's not as fun to do. And we realized that the question show was a lot more fun because it was just kind of, it's really fun to do it. So we tried to think, what could we do that could be fun? And we looked in the calendar and the show for today was ADD and ADHD and medicating children. And we realized
we have a lot of opinion and not a lot of fact because there isn't a lot of fact on that issue.
Well, it was also one of those it's a controversial issue and it would have been fun to do and screw it. And then Emily said, why don't you do a show on books you liked? And that actually works really well and is really easy to do and really fun to do. Because
we could do a Geeknights book club if you want.
Perhaps we could. Maybe once a month.
I think we'd be stealing that from someone else, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah, anyway.
So, at least for now, I think, because we've done this a few times. We've mentioned books we like, but I think we're just going to kind of take turns talking about books that have affected us or that we really remember as being awesome. And that's it. That's as much as we thought about this topic.
All right. Yeah, I guess what it is, we've been doing this for 2 years, right? And, we've always said, yeah, book reviews fit into the show. If it's a sci-fi book, we could do it Monday, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, there aren't so many sci-fi books we've both read.
If we read, like, Lost Kingdoms or something, we could do that on Wednesday.
I mean, I guess we've both read Stranger in a Strange Land, but
yeah,
even then, I got to admit, talking about that book would be
boring.
Kind of dry.
Pretty dry.
My opinions on the book are pretty straightforward, and yeah.
Enjoyable read.
I didn't read the Lensman books yet. Scott hasn't read The Prince of Nothing, even though he should.
Lensman is the same Horatio Hornblower in space and double the badassness.
You haven't even read Horatio.
I don't need to.
Yes, you do.
To take the TV show, double the badassness, put it in space.
It's kind of like if you've seen the James Bond movies and then you read the books. It's the exact same relationship.
Okay, sure, whatever.
Oh, well, I guess you want to go first here, book boy?
Do I want to go first?
Yeah.
All right. The book I read most recently that was incredibly awesome, which I guess if you haven't read it, well, I guess you haven't read it, Rim, have you? The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon.
This book has been recommended to me by everyone, and I just haven't read it yet.
It won a Pulitzer Prize, right? And I don't want to give any merit to, awards and things. But,
I was about to say, I thought you didn't care about awards.
But there's a reason.
It's a major award.
There's a reason it won.
Fragile.
There's a reason it won a Pulitzer Prize. Basically, this book has everything. If Scott had a wheelhouse, if I had a wheelhouse, which I do have a wheelhouse, this book would be spinning in that wheelhouse at 1,000,000 RPMs.
A wheelhouse.
Wheelhouse. You never heard of? Oh, you're getting in my wheelhouse?
No.
You never heard that turn of phrase?
I've never heard that turn of phrase.
Like, you are in my wheelhouse. It's like when something's,
I've never heard that.
All right.
I've heard up in your grill, up in your parliament. But
Similar. Only old-fashioned.
I've never heard up in your wheelhouse ever.
Okay, well, now you have. So, basically, this book, I don't want to get into everything this book is about, but if you care about comic books, I mean, this is a novel, by the way, but if you care about comics at all, you got to read this book. If you care about Jews, you got to read this book also. If you care about adventure and adventure, like spy adventure during the war or New York City, you got to read this book. This book is all those things in one. It's basically, there's a Jew kid in Brooklyn, right? And he's living a pretty life, and he's into the comics, but he's not so great, right? And his cousin escapes the Holocaust, right? And comes. And basically the book starts where he comes home to his Jewish mom, and it's annoying, and then his cousin shows up, and he has to sleep in bed with his cousin that he doesn't even know. He doesn't realize anything. He's just some punk Jewish kid from Brooklyn. But his cousin, escaped the Holocaust and with craziness. And they tell you all that later. And then they have amazing adventures making comic books, of course, and stuff. And it's sort of a fictional, dramatized retelling of some true events that, really happened when, Jews created comic books in New York back in the day. And, dramatic retellings of, people escaping the Holocaust also. And it's amazing. I don't know. What else can I say besides just telling you the whole plot?
I've heard this from a lot of people. It's been recommended to me highly, and I plan to read it, and you all probably should too.
It's cheap. It doesn't take that long to read. It took me like a week or so. And
see, I got a problem,
if you care about magic, if you care about Houdini, if you care about, old mythology like the golem and stuff.
I like me a lot of golems. There was a good escape pod about some golems not too long ago.
Like, I'm talking about the golem, the Prague golem.
Oh, I'm talking about just golems.
No, not those golems. No, the golem, as a capital T golem, capital the. Yeah, this book has all of that, and it all works together in one thing, and how it works together is just crazy. But it's got everything. Best novel of the last 10 years, probably.
All right, so this is a book that my professed liking of gets me a lot of crap, especially from a few of our friends who will remain nameless.
How about me? Does it get crap from me?
Not so much.
All right.
But it gets crap from a few people, and they go on and on about how he's a terrible author and blah, 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 and his books are all... I'm not going to get into it, but... I really like The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. It's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
I don't own a first edition like I do with the Horatio books, but I own the 1956 printing, and
I had to read that for college, I think, in some class, and it was okay.
I had to read it in 11th or 12th grade, and well, the thing is, I'd read
That's the one with the people getting super drunk in Spain and the bullfighting?
that doesn't really narrow it down with Hemingway. No, but-
you know what you
yeah, it's that one.
That's the one where I was so amazed reading the early parts of it when I realized that people were drinking wine by the bottle.
Yeah, and especially because, well, I mean, if you tally up the amount of alcohol they drink, that would be like an OBS 7 test in Burning Wheel to not die.
Something like that. I was just amazed. I was like, is this supposed to be believable? I was like, what's
The thing is, I really dig this book. I mean, in general, I really like Ernest Hemingway's writing, and I think a lot of people who just dismiss him as simplistic, or I think a lot of people dismiss his works out of hand, or because they're told to dismiss it by teachers they get who are.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really. There are certain kinds of literature teachers who will always say, "Yeah, Ernest Hemingway is crap." And
I'm not a dismisser of Hemingway. The Old Man in the Sea is the business, but
I don't know. I liked Farewell to Arms a lot too.
I didn't read that one. See,
you'd probably like that. There's a lot of World War I action.
Anyway, Sun Also Rises, kind of for me. I mean, it's not like, oh, it's a terrible book, but then again, I'm not like, jumping for joy over it like you are.
See, I guess what it was, I'd read a lot of Hemingway's other works, and then I read this, so I kind of had the Hemingway context in place. And as a result, plus also, one of my witty moments in high school, even though I'm sure other people have made this joke, but I said something to the effect of, the sun also rises, a.k.a. at least the sun rises. And no one got it except like 2 kids in class and the literature teacher. And I got bad props for that. I was very proud. And to this day, I wear that as a tiny badge of witticism. Partly because I remember I had one kid who went on and on about the symbolism of the scene at the end with the baton. And I thought he was stretching it a little bit, but then I read the whole book again and I was like, wow, I think Hemingway actually did mean that phallic symbolism. And I don't think I can deny it.
No, it's really hard to deny. I mean, if you ever, I guess I've never met Hemingway, but from what I've known of him. Yeah.
I guess it's just what I liked so much about this book was that on one hand, I saw these characters as so jaded and cynical and ruined as like hulks of people. And yet at the same time, I remember when the main character goes off and he just stays alone in the mountains, like fishing with his one friend, fishing and drinking and doing nothing else. And he's happy and color comes back into the world. And I don't know, it felt like you can escape from that. Like the sun sets, but it also rises. The problem is the characters don't actually realize that. And none of them, well, one guy is like, I guess it's all right, I don't want to go too long about this, but the story follows the main character, but he is not the real main character. He's the one who doesn't escape from the jaded cynicism of life. That other guy, the boxer, escapes from that and has a real life.
Oh, right. Now I remember this book.
Yeah, the book was great because it followed one guy, but the moral was about the other guy. And if you read the book and you think it was about the cynical guy and it's a depressing book.
I do remember that the boxer was the business and the other people were like,
because that's
whatever.
it. The story is about the boxer. It's not about the main character. I think his name was Jack. I haven't read it in a while, but it's about...
Favorite book. What's the main character's name?
I've read it like 10 times, but I haven't read it in like 5 years. But seriously, the book is about the boxer. And if you read it in that way, then it is a romance
Or if
story.
you want it to be about the boxer.
Well, no. I think Hemingway said something to where if you read it about him, then it's a romance story. If you read it about any other character, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the bullfighter's kind of a cock, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh, bullfighter.
But screw you if you don't like this book.
Okay. What book should I talk about next? Let's see.
Are you not ready? I got a list here.
I got. Ready? Okay, so you know Roald Dahl?
Yes.
Yeah, Roald Dahl, he wrote books such as Matilda and James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and all those books that you enjoyed when you were a kid. Well, when I was a kid, I pretty much read all his books because it was easy because all the books were published in the same format so I could recognize them in the store and I knew which ones I didn't have. It was great. And, some of his books were just sort of like quirky, sort of weird stuff like The Twits, and some of his books were serious business. But there's one book of his that is overlooked, I'd say, more than all the others. But it is the most serious business, and it might be one of the best books there is, period. The book is called The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, I think, and some others. And it's a book that contains a bunch of short stories, but there's one relatively big story in the book compared to the others, which is the story of Henry Sugar. And it tries to make you believe it's about a real person, which I don't believe, but that doesn't matter. And basically, the story is this. There's a guy. He's loaded. He lives in London in a flat that's mad monies. He's got mad monies. And all he does every day is go to the casino. And in casino, there's people smoking cigars, and it's big casino life, and that's his living, right? Gambling and woo, richness and drunken and sleeping, right? And one day, he goes to, he's like on vacation somewhere, or visiting someone at their big mansion, because that's what rich people do. And there's a poker game, but there's too many people, so he has to sit out. So he goes to the library in this guy's mansion. He's all alone, there's no one else. He picks up a book, and he starts reading it. And then it cuts to this book, and basically the book he reads is in the book. You start reading that book, and then you're done, and it's back to Henry Sugar. And I'm not going to say anything more that happens, but this book will teach you, this just one story within this book of short stories, right, which has a book in it, will teach you everything you need to know about charity and money and Randy bullshit and gambling and living and everything. And it's like one of the best books there is, and you could probably get it for really cheap, and it won't take you that long to read because I read it when I was in like 5th grade, so I think you can read it now. I don't think we have any 5th graders listening, right? So you're older than a 5th grader. You can read this easily, quickly. You should get it.
Right, so this one's going to be out of place, especially with all the other books I'm talking about. But
All right.
And I have a few friends who have read this, and they agree with me, so I feel not too off base in stating this opinion. But when I was a kid, I read all those like Forgotten Realms books, and
I avoided those books.
I read one Dragonlance book, and then I'd started to read another one, then I realized that I hate Dragonlance and all that. But I read a lot of those, and some were okay, and some were awful, and some of them were particularly awful. But of all those books, there's one that stands out as though it shouldn't be in the same section. I don't know why, but this one book is just good. Like, actually good. Stands on its own as a good novel. A really good novel. A disturbing novel. It is Troy Denning's Pages of Pain. Now, it is set in the Planescape universe and has, like, the Planescape logo like everything else. But don't be fooled. This book has practically nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, and you don't need to know anything about
Then why did they
Planescape.
put the logo on there making me be skeptical? Putting that logo on there is like, let's make Scott skeptical.
Well, because it's nominally written in this universe and is part of all these books. But the thing is, it stands alone, and it kind of takes some of the core ideas of some of the very basic ideas of Planescape in this world and goes in a very, I guess, unexpected and interesting direction. And it's kind of almost a retelling of the story of Theseus, but it's really well written and really disturbingly written. And I don't know, this is one of those books that actually affected me in a very profound way. And I remember I got to a point where I just stayed up all night reading the end of it. And I don't want to ruin anything. I just want to say, if you like literature or fantasy or anything, just pick up Troy Denning's Pages of Pain and just read it. Read it all the way through and tell me what you think about it. Because this book, it transcends what you would expect from a book like this. And I hold it high on the list of books I have read in my life.
I'm just generally skeptical of any book that has some sort of licensed property logo on the cover, because that tells me that this person who wrote this book didn't think it was good enough to stand on its own, and they needed to somehow sell it to fans of that licensed property.
The thing is,
I'm just saying that's what.
I know, but Troy Denning, I mean, he wrote a lot of stuff for D&D, and he wrote under a bunch of pseudonyms, and he's kind of big in that, industry of writing things that.
I'm not saying that's like some law of the universe or anything. I'm just saying that's what, when I see that there, that's what I think. So I tend to steer away, and I'm incredibly skeptical of like any book with a Star Trek logo or a Star Wars logo or a Battletech logo. Even if it's, I love Star Wars, but a Star Wars logo on a book tells me stay away.
This is such an exception. I seriously cannot recommend this book highly enough. Though I will warn you, this book is a tad disturbing and super depressing.
That's fine.
If you couldn't tell from the title, Pages of Pain.
All right. So, that relatively new Miyazaki movie, that Gedo Senki, whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was based on these books, and I think there was a science fiction channel.
Oh, this is a good call.
There was a science fiction channel live-action miniseries, but I heard that it was terrible, even though I never saw it. And I haven't seen the Miyazaki movie yet, although I'm sure I will at some point. And from what I hear, while I'm not sure how good or bad it was. People didn't seem to say it was as good as other Miyazaki movies, and the person who wrote these books it was based on said, well, it was she didn't say, oh, it was terrible. She said, well, it was something different. It wasn't my story, it was his story, right? And, these books were based on these movies and miniseries and things were based on a series of books called the Earthsea whatever Chronicles, whatever you want to call them. It's Earthsea, The Tales of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I own like a zillion books by this lady, and there's 4 or 5 of them, and you really only have to read like the first 3 or 4. You know, you should be able to get them like in a set with all the same printing on them. And these are, I'm not gonna lie, they're basically, you know, they're fantasy novels written at sort of a children's level, you know. But if you're reading Harry Potter, you should not be. You can read these. It's better than Harry Potter, that's for sure.
I just have to say, the story of Harry Potter is all cool, and I like the characters.
I don't like the story. I don't like Harry Potter at all.
I like the characters. I like the story. I think Snape is like the best dude ever. But that woman cannot write. Good God.
I don't like anything about Harry Potter except for funny Flash videos people make out of it.
Bother.
Yeah, that can be funny.
Just the way she writes, like her use of English just bothers me, and I can't get past that.
So if you need a point of reference to see how much Harry Potter sucks, Earthsea is the business. This is where you want to go. All right, you know how sometimes you read like some sort of epic fantasy trilogy or something, and it always feels, even Lord of the Rings, right? It feels like the real business went down before the books you're reading now.
AKA like in the Silmarillion.
Right. But it's like whatever the story you're reading about now, they always talk about the epic war of the past that is so much bigger and badder than the thing that you're reading right now.
I think part of the reason for that is that following the bigger, badder, epic story is often not nearly as interesting.
That is true, and there's a certain amount of merit in that. However, this story of Earthsea, at least the first 3 books, right, tells the story of this guy, Ged, right? And it feels like when you're at the beginning of the book, right, when you're reading early on, it feels like, the awesome stuff all happened in the past when the world was full of dragons, and look at the guy mentoring the main character, Ged. He is like, you know, the most badassest wizard, you know, there is, and everything is all man's, right? But as you read on, you realize that Ged is basically like the Merlin of this universe. You know, it's like, yeah, there was badass stuff in the past, but you're reading the story of the guy, not like, you know, Luke Skywalker, but in the past, you know, Yoda was really the guy, you know, not like Darth Vader was really the guy in the past. No, this is the guy. So as you read on, this is so awesome, this shit. And, you know, it's not like the deepest thing it's not shallow, but it's not like the deepest thing ever. There's you know, a nice poignant message towards the end of the first book, and you know, they start introducing different characters in like the second and third books, and they get it, and Ged sort of becomes like, you know, it's like you read the story of this guy in the first book, and then in like the later books, he sort of becomes this, you know, distant, amazing, powerful guy. But you're like, wait, I read that story. Oh my God, you know, it you know, imagine if like, you know, the first Harry Potter book, you know, it's okay, and then the second Harry Potter book is about someone else, and Harry Potter is like some, you know, mystical, oh my God guy that like doesn't even show. That's how awesome this is, and that's the feeling you get while reading it. And it's high quality, and it doesn't take long to read at all. They're like little books meant for much younger audience. Why am I doing all these young kids' books? I don't know.
So I gotta say, and I think I've made reference to this before, but I think my favorite novel ever, like of all time, hands down, is The Count of Monte Cristo.
You only read that recently.
I know, and you know, well, recently, God, I read it when I was still going to RIT.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I thought you read it like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd read excerpts from it, a lot of excerpts from it throughout, you know, high school, even in middle school, like short, like, I guess, simplified excerpts. And relatively recently, like in the last many years, I read the whole thing straight up, relatively unabridged. And it's one of my favorite novels ever. I'm not going to tell you the story of The Count of Monte Cristo, other than that it is probably the best story of revenge ever written. I cannot name one better.
It is quite a story of revenge, there is no doubt.
I love it. And to get into no great detail, I think the reason I like it beyond anything else is that partly because of the way it was written, it ended up that the pace of the story, you know, a lot of novels like skip over a lot, or the action kind of zooms in and zooms out and speeds up and slows down depending on what action is going on. Like a scene where there's action will be described in like excruciating detail, but then other scenes will be described in little detail, and important details will kind of stand out, Scooby-Doo-ish almost. Mm-hmm. The Count of Monte Cristo keeps an even keel pretty much throughout, to the point that everything is described very kind of straightforward, matter-of-factly. And I don't know, as a result, and it's all like from the perspective of the Count. And you just kind of go through this story in a semi-realistic way. And it draws me along in such this, I love it.
The only thing I can say
it.
about that book, though, is that it was from a time where they paid you by the page. And
Oh, yeah, he was paid like by the word. There's a reason why he was so circuitous in his...
Yeah.
But regardless of why it was written that way, this book is fucking awesome. And also, I do want to say, however, if you were going to read it, read the translation by Robin Buss, and don't read any other translation, because they're all pretty awful.
Okay.
And read an unabridged, the relatively unabridged Penguin Classics one is like the best translation of this book. And a lot of people say, oh, they dumbed it down. No. All they did was because the thing is, it was written kind of in colloquial French, which sounds kind of stilted if you translate it directly or compare it to modern French. So a lot of the translations end up translating it in this really stilted way. But it was written in the vernacular. So the Buss translation is really kind of a vernacular. And also...
Zing.
Okay. Anyway, seriously.
You get my joke?
Read the Penguin Classics one. Don't bother with any other translation. You'll enjoy it 1,000 times more.
It's a public domain book, so like anyone and their mother can print a copy in any form they want.
But the Penguin Classics one, I just looked it up, was actually written in 1996, so it's a recent translation.
All right.
And read that one seriously. Forget anything else.
All right, I'm going to do a double book combo. You ready?
Oh, and don't watch any movies because they're unmitigatingly awful.
I've never seen any.
They're awful.
Isn't there like incredibly old black and white one that's supposed to be good?
Oh, no, it's not good.
Okay.
It's awful.
All right, so I got a double book combo, right? Ready? One really small book and one really big book. Ready? If you're playing Civilization and you want the mad monies, what do you build?
Well, what do I build? Oh, I know where you're going with this. Because what I build are fanatics, because that's all I use. But before that, I build Marco Polo, and then I build Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. And what do they teach you in social studies class about how, we have capitalism? Where did that come from?
Well, they always dumb it down and say, well, capitalism is all Adam Smith, and communism is all Karl Marx, or possibly Engels.
Yep. And that's what they teach you in school. And whatever truth may lie in that, the fact of the matter is this. I'm not going to make a communism versus capitalism argument right now, but I'll say this. Go on Amazon, and if you don't already, buy a copy of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx, and buy a copy of The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And when you get these books in the mail from Amazon, they're pretty cheap. I mean, these are public domain books.
This is just so good.
One of these books is very small, and one of these books is very big. And I'm not going to tell you which is which. But I will tell you that it is obvious one person thought their clever plan through, and one person did not. Now, I only own one of these. I only own one of these books, the larger one, because the smaller one is not needed.
I own the smaller one. I've read it. I've read it numerous times.
I never read it because I never thought it was worth it.
I don't think he thought his clever plan. Because here's the thing: you read the Communist Manifesto, and it's basically blah blah blah. The workers blah blah, and Adam Smith is like, well, what if blah happens? And Adam's like, well, we do this. But what about blah? Well, we do this. And a lot of people point out the failings of capitalism, and Scott and I have come to the opinion that those are not failings of capitalism. Those are failings of our economic system, because our Western economic system is not Adam Smith capitalism by any stretch.
That is correct. If you actually, I don't suggest you read this book straight through because it will hurt you.
No, God.
But take this book and the printing I have, which is like this golden paperback, right? I mean, the cover, it's gold. It looks golden. I don't know who publishes it, but it's like has the ultimate
is silver and the other's gold.
Right, if you combine the table of contents in the front and the index in the back. Pretty much if anyone makes any comment about economics whatsoever, using that index, you can find exactly what they're talking about. Look it up in the book, and there's your answer, and it makes perfect sense every time.
For example, we were arguing about a minimum wage. I'm not going to say which side either one of us were on, because it doesn't matter, but we disagreed, and other people weren't sure. We had this big argument. So finally, we're like, let's just see what Adam Smith said, and we'll agree that that's probably the way we should go. And we were like, oh, there's a whole section on that. And basically,
there's a whole chapter. I think it's chapter 4 or 7 called The Wages of Labor. That is the best chapter.
Now,
everyone should read that
to
chapter.
Summarize,
odds are you are a laborer or will be.
To summarize, Adam Smith's position was basically that if a job is not worth being paid a living wage for, then the job is not worth doing. Because if it's necessary, someone is eventually going to be willing to pay a living wage for it. And I think there could be modern exceptions because now we have the idea of part-time work and that sort of thing. But
I'm going to have to look up part-time work now.
But on average, I feel like, yeah, if a job is that necessary, then a basic living wage should be provided.
If the job takes all day to do.
Or else the job obviously wasn't as important as you think it is.
Yep.
But yeah, you can, if nothing else, if you argue about economics,
Which you probably do if you're on the internet.
you would better have a copy of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations.
And the thing that I think is most important about this book is that you learn in school, like laissez-faire. Adam Smith wanted everyone to leave economics alone and let it do what it wanted. And that's true to a certain extent. But if you actually read the book, you'll find that many of the typical, say, libertarian laissez-faire stances in economics disagree with Adam Smith quite a bit. And you will find that Adam Smith thought his clever plan through, and he knows. He knows the business. I mean, he wrote this book ages ago, but he was a big businessman in a time when the world was crazy business. And he wrote a gigantic book that is available now, and you should not deny yourself access to this book. Maybe you can get it for free on like Project Gutenberg. You should look it up.
It's very to the point.
It is very to the point, but also, he's kind of snarky in some points. It's not like, this like boring reference book.
It's not like reading translations of Greek.
No, it's very, he spoke English. It was not that old, it was an English book. It was in English. You could understand what he's talking about. It's not a translation. It's very well footnoted all over the place. Everything, sometimes you have to read a little slowly because it is, it's not old English in the literal sense, but it is ye old English in the jovial sense. And you should own a copy of this book. It's worth owning. So, this is something, because, I've been on my 12 Byzantine emperors Roman history kick. God.
Now, what book do you think I'm going to bring up? Because I'm not going to say the decline and fall of the Roman Empire.
One of those Penguins classics that ends in Cleese.
Actually, no, I'm going to talk a little bit about Plutarch's Roman Lives.
Okay.
Because I picked this up kind of on a lark, and I've been reading it, and I've always liked reading. Like, whenever I read about history, I adore primary sources. Like, reading a historical work written by a Roman about the ancient Egyptians is just fascinating to me on many levels, especially if it's annotated. So I get the modern translator saying things like, well, he was mistaken here because of blah, or he obviously made this up. But I recently picked up Plutarch, and Plutarch lived in, 50, 60, 100, sometime AD, like kind of when the Roman Empire was doing pretty well. And he wrote about Roman and Greek history, and he was a historian and a writer. And one of the thing he's most known for are his parallel lives, or his lives, where he would basically find the history and write a story of a person who may or may not have been fictional, but is generally like, he'll pick like a figure in Roman or Greek history and just kind of give an account of their life from the perspective of the Roman people or the Greek people. And all I have to say is that reading primary sources about the Romans by the Romans and the Greeks gives you a very interesting perspective on the Romans. And I'm more and more, and it's not just from Plutarch, it's from other sources, get the impression that before Rome was a large empire and when they were just one struggling state amidst many in Italy, the Romans were kind of funny and overly, to quote their neighbors, overly obsessed with democracy and a sense of civic duty. And they were kind of, I don't know, the politics of Rome were very funny. Like, a lot of times there would be disputes between the gentry and the peasants, or the laborers, or just like the people living in apartments in the city. And the people of the city would say, fuck this, and just kind of march out of the city and basically say, all right, you guys are on your own, and just march out to this hill. And then the patricians would have to like ride out to the hill and be like, please come back to the city. We'll forgive your debt and enact like judicial and social reform. And they'd be like, I don't know. And the Romans were just very funny. And I guess it's very easy reading history to forget that the people living in Rome or Persia or Germany or any place where there's kind of a historical thing going on, especially ancient history, to forget that the actual people who were living then were not much different from us now. And they had the same problems, and they argued about the same things, and Caesar went to war on dubious pretext despite the wishes of the Senate, and then came back and used that glory for political gain, and the people were rallying against this like stupid and costly and wasteful war in a foreign land against people who were generally innocent. And there's just the people in ancient Rome and ancient Greece were not that different from us, and often had the same kind of stupid problems that we have now.
Is that all you got to say?
The only other thing I have to say is that if you want to read history like this, I generally recommend reading Latin or later Greek things, because earlier Greek writings are often, even translated, incredibly tedious to read. Good God, do I like Xenophon's histories, but good God, can I not stay awake? It's like, and then so-and-so went off to so-and-so, but many a thing happened when so-and-so went off to so-and-so, because so-and-so said such and such.
I think that's why the 12 Byzantine Emperor's Guide gets it so right, because he takes the so-and-so, he takes the boringness, and he makes the dramatic story out of it.
Well, I think what he does well, too, is he'll say things like very straight up, like this happened. But unlike a lot of the primary sources, he makes it obvious when you should be reading between the lines. He lays it on thick. And of course, what would be the obvious thing to do in such a situation would be to do blah. And it's like, wow, yeah, sure, okay. Go Rome.
All right. You want me to pull one out from under you here?
Yeah, let's each do one more.
All right, I'm gonna steal "American Gods" by Neil Gaiman.
You ass! I had that open. I guess we'll end on that.
I just yoinked that. I knew that was gonna work.
All right, fine. I'll yoink it. American Gods is fucking awesome. Neil Gaiman is like my personal hero. I find him a little bit sexy.
This book,
he's very British and very he's rugged and he's cute. What can I say? I'm sorry.
So this book, if you are a fan
of anything.
No, if you're, this book is great because it combines so many things. It combines mythology, right, in the old sense, mythology in the new sense. It combines, the sort of story you get of the grifter. It combines the story of, one man in sort of like very Americana kind of existence kind of story. And also sort of like the epic, defeat the big villain kind of story in a way, guy on a quest, meeting a bunch of people on the way kind of thing.
But also a little slice of life, also a mystery.
Yep.
And then another mystery. And then a mystery
surprise.
A mystery you didn't realize was there unless you were paying attention.
Super attention.
And just a cast of extremely interesting, memorable characters that come back in ways you wouldn't expect. And
yeah, it's a good time.
This is one of those books that I wouldn't say that, if you like such and such a book, you would like this book. Because this book is just it's written for you. And there aren't many people who dislike this book.
If you're listening to this show, it's for you.
I mean, I don't even want to say much about it because I don't want to ruin anything.
Well,
other than that,
there's some gods in it, and there's some Americans. And that's about it. American plus gods.
You want to read a book that is well written. This book is so well written. Yeah, I mean, so engrossing.
I haven't read, the mountain of Neil Gaiman stuff there is.
I believe it's Gaiman, but
Gaiman, whatever. I've read 1602. I have that.
Well, we met the man, and
I met him, and I fell asleep not because he was boring me, but because I had just been in a car for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. That was sad.
Yeah,
I think we've told that story before.
Yeah, that was the best convention ever, though, in terms of awesome versus expected awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I haven't read any of his other stuff, but this book is just so quadruple the business. I don't know. I mean, he's got the symbology the exact way I like my symbology. He's got the mixing of the crazy stuff, but the suspension of the disbelief that totally works for me.
The humor is hilarious. The foreshadowing is good. I said this before, but the writing is so good. If you want to see why I can't read Harry Potter, read this book.
Yeah.
Just the way he uses words and the way he alludes to things and the way he parallels things. The structure, forget what he's writing about. The parallelism between sentences is just amazing.
All right.
I don't know. I mean, There's a bunch of books I could have brought up, but I obviously didn't. We're done. I'm just going to mop up a little bit. Of course, C.S. Forrester, Horatio Hornblower, the Temeraire books by Naomi Novik, even though they're pulp, they're my kind of pulp. Napoleonic Wars, Dragons on Ships, OMG.
If you're like Gabe from Penny Arcade, or I guess Mike Krahulik from Penny Arcade, then you will enjoy The Lensman, which has rockets and planets on the covers.
He's like, if a book has a rocket and a planet and like then that's
a
like
laser,
a laser on it, that's just kind of book. If there's a ship and a dragon, I'm gonna read it.
Yeah.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.